Okay, we're going to start this now. Welcome, everyone. I'm 𝗪𝗏 𝗪𝗏. I'm from Parallax Photojournal. We publish photography or documentary photography from in and around Southeast Asia. Today, we partnered with Pictures of the Year Asia to bring you today's conversation. So a quick couple of housekeeping things. The chat is open for you and the Q&A is open for you in the audience. So if you have a question for our panelists, please drop them into one or the other. Okay, so with us today, we have a star-studded panel today for today's conversation. So we've got Veejay Villafranca from the Philippines, we've got Annice Lyn from Malaysia, Wong Maye-E, who's based in the USA, Joshua Irwandi, who's coming to us from a hospital in Indonesia. Joshua, thank you for your commitment. Nyimas Laula from Indonesia, 𝗍𝗵𝗁𝗲𝗄 from Malaysia, 𝗪𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗶 from Singapore, Valeria Mongelli, who is based in Thailand. And we are going to have Mohammed Fadli as well. He is currently trying to find a spot with good connectivity. Moderating our chat is 𝗍𝗵𝗁𝗂𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗄, former director of Pictures of the Year Asia. He also used to head up the Straits Times picture desk. And Tom White, who is our editor-in-chief here at Parallax Photojournal. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to our moderators.
I think to kickstart, we want to explain a little bit why we are doing this. After 4 years of running Pictures of the Year Asia, we kind of got a little bit tired and maybe a little bit lost, and we wanted to take a year off to think, how can we be relevant to the community? How can we serve the community better? So while thinking about all this philosophical question, we thought we got a little bit bored and we want to be in touch. So we decided to team up with Parallax to do something more educational. So as a result, this series of webinars, and we are hoping to do it again in June as well as in September and maybe December as well. Okay. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, coming from the perspective of Parallax, we just really interested in having these kind of community-based conversations, So, where everybody is all throughout Southeast Asia, there's lots going on in all the different countries. There's the photo festivals, there's your own regional hubs of activity, and just as many sort of cross-border conversations that we can get going as possible, I think is something that we're really keen to just help facilitate. So, that's the sort of the background to why we're trying to do this.
Well, let's kickstart by finding out a little bit more about some of you. Bear in mind that a lot of people joining this conversation today are young and they are looking for role models. They are looking for stories. They want to know how did, for example, how did 𝗍𝗵𝗁𝗲𝗄𝗵, how did he become a photographer? Did he go to photo school? Was he always interested in photojournalism and questions like that? So Yen, why did you get us started? How did you become a photographer?
All right. Thanks, Kachin. So I'll try and keep this short, but I actually started out trying to be an illustrator. I love drawing, but I discovered photography in my teens, and it started a whole chain of events in which I decided at the end, after my college, to go to China and travel there, because I spent that was back in the late 90s. I used to look at a lot of photography books and felt a sense of adventure. And I always found these people like Eugene Smith who were seemingly making a difference in the world. And I wanted to at least just have that taste of adventure and decide what I was going to do. So I had 50 rolls of film, went off traveling, initially for 2 months in China, and ended up traveling for 6 months. I came back broke and did that again for 3 years, for at least 3 years, just coming back, working and going off again. the main thing I was trying to discover was whether this was a life that I could actually do. And eventually it became my life. So I work for magazines. Back in the day, I used to work for Time and Newsweek. In the last few years, I've done a bit more work for people like National Geographic. And I do a combination of even commercial work sometimes to pay the bills. So that's who I am. And I have exhibitions, and I've published the odd book as well. So that's me.
How about you, Nyimas? How did you become a photographer?
Well, it's actually similar with Ian. Like I was exploring a lot of different mediums when I was in university. So I found like a film photography back then, and I was kind of like trying a lot of like photography genre during my time in university. And I was a design student back then. And when I finally graduate, I was like finishing my studies, and I was thinking that, okay, I know like I study design, but the university made me realize that I don't want to do design in my life. So after that, like, okay, I just like decided that I want to do like photography, but what kind of photography that I want to pursue. And back then, like in like 10 years ago, I haven't like experience or like journalism in like studies and everything. So like there was an internship at one of like news agency in Jakarta, and I just applied for it. I don't have any like background in journalistic or journalism, and I don't have any portfolio in that sense. So and I end up accepted in that internship. That was Reuters in 2015. So after that, and I think the rest is history. So I just like continue doing photojournalism.
What about, is there anyone here who actually went to photo school and like from day one wanted to be a photographer?
Not from day one.
Right. Veejay, what about you? Like, you wear many hats, I know. Apart from taking photos, you're also an editor.
Hi, everyone. For me, I think, well, my late father was a photojournalist, but he never practiced in the mainstream media. He was a staff photographer for a housing agency, basically working for the government. I guess the inspiration also came from his father. My late grandfather was a print journalist. So I grew up with this idea and the value for information and mainly information and news. It didn't come of use until about 2001, where we had the second EDS revolution in Manila that overthrew a president, which became, my dad dragged me to that event that sort of propelled my yearning for this kind of work. And I didn't know that you can make a life out of it, but I guess here I am together with all of you. To pursue it, I did become a full-time news photographer, and then later on I started practicing and pursuing personal work, which is basically journalistic stories that I feel more strongly about. But up to this day, I still continue to do news photography and other things, amongst other things.
We'll come back to each one of you. Valeria, you're from Italy and now you live in Bangkok.
Yes.
I'm guessing that photography was the reason why you ended up in Asia.
Yeah, it was definitely. I actually started publishing my very first stories published on international media were actually produced in Thailand during COVID. So I had been living in Thailand during COVID time for a while. And then I always had this thing that I wanted to go back and try to cover the region more extensively. So yeah, that's why I moved back to Bangkok a couple of years ago now.
And Hwee, I know a little bit about your career. I know you started in newspaper. and then you have you went to wire services. Like, can you maybe tell us, like, what is your background? What do you study?
Well, actually, I got into photography quite late in life. I mean, I only kind of like started learning in uni. I was actually a business student in accountancy, and then that was when there was an elective on photography, and I just kind of fell into it. And at that time, it was still, film and darkroom and everything. So it was kind of like quite a special time for me, and I really fell in love with photography. And then, after that, when I started working for Ernst & Young, and I just felt that it didn't really work out for me, and I applied for a job with the Straits Times. So I was with the Straits Times for 3.5 years, and after that I moved on to the European Press Photo Agency, EPA, and I've been working with EPA since then. I was also a regional chief for China for almost 10 years. I was based in Beijing between 2010 and 2019, and then now I came back. I'm a regional chief for Southeast Asia and East Asia. Also a senior editor, balancing these two roles at this time. So yeah, that's more or less my journey.
Annice, I believe I can't remember you are a sportswoman. You like sailing or skating or skiing or.
No, that's me. That's no, I'm not actually a sports person. That's I think yeah. But I mean, we do sports photography quite a lot.
Annice,
both of you, like beyond EPA does a lot of sports. Annice does a lot of sports. Nice segue.
Okay.
Yeah, but actually doing the sports, not really. But photographing sports, I did that for quite a while. I mean, we were covering the Olympics, and also all the major sports events until right now. I mean, I'm taking more of a back-end role right now as an editor, but yeah, before that it was quite intense, but not so much now.
And then Annice, can you hear us? Yeah.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So you came into photography as well, like through photographing sports. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was a former national sports athlete. Then after that, I pursued architecture. So from there, architecture, I think one thing we were taught, like, whether we have to be basically our own COE during architecture. COE meaning chief of everything. So we have to present, we have to design. We also come from design, so I see a few of them, like, I think Nyimas also come from design. So architecture school, I think by the end of my architecture year, it served me well that I don't want to be an architect. Yeah. Yeah, so from architecture, I also, at the meantime, while pursuing my architecture study, I was also in competitive figure skating for my scholarship and all. And then I got into an injury, so that's where I doubled into photography. And I think more so the photojournalistic type of influence, it's basically from my parents, because I was born and raised by both of my parents are social worker. So during my downtime, I remember my dad will ask me to, like, come and take photos of all the old folks. It's like, if any of you know Cantonese and Chinese, it's like, is there 𝗱𝗵𝗹𝘆. So, but the thing is, because in the old folks home, majority of them are unelected, and I realized the joy of them being their photo taken, even though the word of 𝗱𝗵𝗹𝘆, which is like the portrait in front of the car when they pass away, it's like a taboo and all. But for these old folks, they felt like, they felt seen and they felt appreciated. So I think it started from there, that I actually really want to get into this more, and yeah, that's how I progressed on. And it started off with, I really want to do sports, double into figure skating, but obviously there is a challenge, and also knowing the market as well in Southeast Asia. And then after giving some advice from editor, knowing that as photographer, we also need to understand that what you need to do and what you want to do. So even there, you need to be multifaceted and versatile to get into what you truly want to do, like the road to truly want to do. So I learned a lot from there, and that's how I get into news photography. Yeah, from sport to news. Yeah.
This should show, so I could segue from getting injured into man in hospital, Joshua. So, Joshua, you want to tell us a little bit about what happened to you?
Well, I'm in a hospital in Jakarta at the moment. Hi, everyone. And I got malaria. I just found out. I think this is a like a little parting gift from my time in Asmat in Papua, and possibly Kanchanaburi in Thailand. So who knows? But in terms of my journey, I suppose it's I've always liked photography since high school. I spent my high school in Canada, and I initially I actually wanted to be a writer. I took English literature at university, but I always find that photography speaks to me more, and basically when I was at uni, I think that was like my real formative years. So if any of you are still at uni, then I would definitely suggest just get your hands on photography in any form. So I did the I was the chief photographer for the campus paper, and I also did a lot of theater work. And I think you mentioned Kai-Chin, like if any of us here went to a photo school, and that's what I came to pursue for my master's. I went to London College of Communication. Well, just 3 hours away from Exeter. I was studying under the late Paul Lowe, and people like Jocelyn Bain-Hogg, all these guys, Louis Bush, Max Houghton, all these critics and whatnot. And like obviously when I was at Exeter, I tried a whole bunch of things, but like for me, documentary photography, photojournalism is the genre, if you like, that I can sort of really express myself, my observations about the state of the world, as it were. And yeah, basically that. That's how I started.
Then okay, great, thanks, Joshua. And then Fadli, you want to round us off? And then May.
Oh, okay. Fadli, you're muted.
Oh, okay. Now it's good. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm actually driving home now from Jakarta to Sumatra. So I tried to find a good spot, and hopefully the sound is fine. It's a little bit windy here. So yeah, about my story, I think everything started during the university years for me. At the time, in my faculty, there was a audiovisual studio, and the studio got a grant from a Japanese institution, so they bought a new camera for that. So when they were using it, so I thought, okay, can I bring the camera out and just to try, and then that's how everything started for me, and I found oh, this is something that I could do, and something that I really like as well. So when I graduated by 2007, some of my friends already started to know me that I like to do photography. And a friend of mine who worked at a local newspaper back in my hometown in Sumatra asked me if I would like to join the newsroom for as a photographer, and I said yes. And that's how everything started for me. And then by the time going, I moved to Jakarta by 2010, working for Tempo, the Indonesian news magazine. And yeah, up until now, yeah, I do photography, mostly documentary and photojournalism and portrait photography as well.
Right, thank you. Actually, I'm going to ask a question and open up to everybody. It has less to do with photography, more to do with geography. some wise person once told me, first decide where you want to live. Because, decide where you want to live, and then decide who you want to work for. Like, so I know Yen has Malaysian parents, but grew up in the UK. So, but obviously he's been back in Asia for, I think, a good 2 decades. So, can you maybe take all of us through this process of like, how do you come to this decision making, like to be based in KL? What are the pros and what are the cons, and what kind of jobs can you expect? And so that the younger people tuning in can find out like, hey, I only want to live in Singapore, but I want to be a war photographer. Then it's like, okay, how? Like, you have to go start a war, right? Like because how can you be a war photographer in Singapore? So yeah, I think maybe yeah, if you can kickstart that thinking. How did you decide to come back to Asia, and how did you make Asia your playground, and how do people from the Western world know of your existence and look for you when they want an assignment to be executed?
Okay. Actually, yeah, that's a good question. Maybe I can use it also as a segue to talk about how in some way that helped develop my career as well. So I studied in the UK, and because I decided I wanted to go to China to like, there were 2 things I wanted to do when I first went to China. One was I loved working maybe in a team, like with other people, etc. And I wasn't sure if doing a solitary job like being a photographer was something that would really go down well with me. So that was one question I wanted to answer when I first went out. So by being 2 months away, that was one thing. The second part of going to China was maybe kind of like to go back to my roots and just learn something about that. And I had this rosy idea of doing documentary photography. I had such an amazing experience in that time that I kept wanting to repeat it. And the 3 years that I was there was kind of like building my craft. And then at the end of the 3 years, I was so depressed because I was having a good time, but I wasn't making a living out of what I was doing. So I actually, when people ask me what I did for a living, I would actually say I kind of do photography, but I don't make a living out of it. I felt like as long as I wasn't making a buck out of it, that was a real issue for me. So I started knocking on doors, calling to see people. And back in the day, there wasn't really the internet around that time. It was just starting out. So it was very much getting on the phone and calling people up and just bringing your work and seeing them. I established a bunch of contacts in London at that point, and I started to get my early work at that point. Then I got my first gig, etc. I kept going back to China. And the reason I did that was because throughout those first 3 years, even though I didn't know what I was doing, I got a sense that there was a big change that was happening in that country. And I figured, well, I don't know how to do photo essays. I don't know how to put a photo story together, but I can just keep going back there and just keep learning. And that's what I did. And fast forward several years later, I'd already started working for several magazines. I chose to live there for a couple of years because at that point I was starting out doing a series called Dark Clouds, and it was really looking at the coal industry in China. So up to that point, I was maybe making one long trip to China or some other part of the world to do my stories. And I would go away for 5 weeks, and I was still broke at that time. So I was renting my flat out, subletting my flat, doing everything that would just keep the costs down. That time when I went off to China to be there, that allowed me to really focus on my project, because that project needed more commitment, you know. So I was there in order to allow me to go like every month or every 2 months to go and explore these industrial landscapes and kind of grow my work. So that was the first decision to be for a couple of years in China. And Malaysia was different. I met my wife here. And by that time, my work had become, I always tell students this, like everything you do in photography, if you want to do a certain type of photography, make sure you leave some kind of karmic footprint, or make sure you vote with what you do. So even though you have to go and do wedding photography or corporate photography or any other kind of photography to support yourself, make sure that the balance of all of the work that you do is in the direction that you want it to go. And so because I was focusing, without really thinking where I wanted to focus, I was interested in China initially and in the environment. My specialism started to kind of like be around Asia, specifically with China. Then it started to grow out to other places. I still travel to lots of other places in the world, but I realized that by the time I came to Malaysia, it was, people had already known me for this work. So it was easy, and I already had a client base in the West and Europe and other parts of Asia as well. So it was easy for me to get work here, and it wasn't such a difficult choice, even though it was a kind of personal choice to be here initially. It kind of fit with what I was trying to do.
So that's great, Ian. I think your experience is very specific to you, but I think you shared some great insight about how you start to evolve and know what you like, and you kind of went with the flow with the specific kind of structure to set your path for success, right? Into doing the things that sustain you, but still trying to make a brand name for yourself. Now, I know we have at least two of you here who have staff jobs, right? But not everybody has staff jobs. So I think my main question is that popped up based on your conversation is, how do you know what kind of photography do you want to do, right? How did you discover that? And I'm gonna call out somebody just to share your personal experience, and how as a freelancer are you surviving and finding that work? How do you navigate that space to build your brand, right? And maybe, I know Annice does freelancing, right? Do you do freelancing too? So maybe can you speak to that? How do you know what your specialty is, but how do you navigate the space of doing what you're specialized in and doing the grim and grips, and how do you work with editors, your own experience?
Thanks, Maye, for that question. I think really no road is still it's always a roller coaster bumping down. I started out 6 years ago, and honestly, 6 years ago, I clearly knew what I wanted. And until today, I still knew what I wanted. It's to be a staffer. That is the main thing. So along the way, this 6 years, what are you going to do to reach there, right? So again, back to the thing is, there are things that you want to do and you need to do. So my goal has always been clear that one day, hopefully, I would want to work as hard as I can, or all the way there to be a staffer. So I started out really wanting to shoot sports. So I knock on the door, and I knock on the door that I really want to, which is Getty Image Sports. And at that time, the editor was nice enough to tell me that, in Southeast Asia, the market is just different. Let's say you have to know that how the market is, and who your client is and all. So from there on, another thing is where you're from as well, geographically speaking as well. So I'm from Malaysia, and there's just sometimes we look so much at what we want, and the grass is always greener on the other end, but you also have to know that the grass is greener on your end if you just take a look and water a bit. So when that happens, when in 2020 November is where I get acquainted with my news gallery editor. So Vivek, he's amazing. So then that's where the opportunity presents itself also. It's you have this aim, but there's another opportunity presented. Okay, you're from Malaysia, and it's a melting pot of culture. So is that something that you will be willing to open as well, to tap into news? And that's where I've been oh, okay, I think I can do this. And little did I know that all the things that I grew up with, my influence and all, with old folks home at the old folks and the children home and orphanage, is where I put my skills to, and then from there I'll take it on. So I feel like no matter what we do or wherever we are now, or any of you feel stuck, I think the bigger question is, how do we start? is where identifying what you want to do. And also don't be afraid of knock on doors. I'm coming from a place that I'm an introvert, and in Chinese, we are always very courteous. We are very like submissive, very 𝗍𝗍 to ask. But for me, I feel like if I want something, I really believe in something, I have to do something that out of my comfort zone. So for me, what hard for me is really knock on people's door.
Okay,
Because
I think, sorry, I need to kind of just, I want to hear from different voices. I think that's a very good point. I think to sum it up, it's like being open to learn and taking a few meanders in this journey and going with the flow, and then applying skill sets into the next thing that you do, right? So on that note, I'm going to twist this a little bit and ask Veejay, because you grew up with all these expectations, you grew up in a family of like PJs and journalism is in your blood. And we are talking about how we survive, but I want you to think a little bit about, and anyone can jump in, is there ever a point where you failed and how, or you hit a roadblock and you question yourself on why am I doing this and how did you come out of that? Because it's never easy, even with staff jobs, you question what you're doing and why are you doing it. But I'm sure the path in the road in freelancing is even tougher, right? So I don't know, Veejay, do you have any lessons in your life that you want to impart and share?
Thanks, May. Yeah, I think I share the sentiments of most of us here. In terms of the choice of photography, initially I really wanted to be a staffer as well. In the Philippines, originally we used to have, I think, 2 staffers and 1 chief photographer, plus a number of correspondents per agency. But that changed drastically in the last 15 to 20 years. I used to be a regular contributor to a news agency as well. But then I was really hoping for but like as I mentioned earlier, I had a few projects and stories that I wanted to pursue. So I decided to work on those and try to find funding for those. There's a lot of a huge margin for failure in a sense that you can try to find funding and hoping to find also publications that would support it, especially maybe around 10-15 years ago, which was quite difficult. I don't mean that it is easier today, but there's a lot more access to, I guess, photo editors, news agencies, and other sources of support, financial or other types of support, for example, like Parallax as well, and communities, smaller communities today. So I think in terms of failure, it really depends. Is it a failure of your story? Is it that you hit a wall visually, or the story doesn't really evolve anymore? Or is it a failure of trying to find funding or support to pursue the story? So in both cases, I think communities really helped a lot. Here in Southeast Asia, I think we are interconnected by some communities. For example, the Anchor Photo Festival, some of the photo festivals in different regions, objectives as well. And now we have Parallax, Kathmandu, so on. In the Philippines, we don't have one yet, but we really relied on the smaller sort of community initiatives that helped us propel, or at least, perk us up when we're down and nothing is happening, or even help us in finding jobs that are not really connected to what we're working, commercial work, anything that would sort of push us forward.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I actually have 2 questions, which I have a reserved one for Priyang later. We can talk about the shift from photojournalism as a photographer to the editor and how you navigate that space and that learning curve and experience for you. But I want to open this to Laula and Valeria and even Joshua. Like, Veejay talked about community, right? And freelancing and photography and photojournalism is a very lonely role. Because you go out there, you meet people, and you become their best friend for 8 seconds. You're exposed to the elements. Maybe each one of you can give me a very quick answer about how you navigate that space, what kind of support network you have, how do you stay safe in the field, right? Let's start with Laula. How do you navigate that space of being a photographer where you're based You know, do you have a good network, community, and how do you stay safe in general, right? We don't have to be specific. You can be specific.
Thank you. I think like in my like beginning of my career, there was also like at the same time there is like a movement in the industry where people are demanding for a news outlet and magazine to hire more people from diverse backgrounds. So that's where I began to, I think in 2018, that was the first beginning of woman photograph. And I was kind of like one editor, I think from AP Indonesia, was just sending this like Google sheet of the woman photograph is collecting the database about women photojournalists and non-binary across the world. I was just like filling it out, and I don't have any expectation of whatsoever about the organization, but I think that's where the network start to open, like for me, and a lot of supports. Like for real, I think a lot of us are very confused in, like, for example, reading contracts. Like what is this mean? You know, I don't know. Like even like some contracts that I haven't like experienced, or like I don't know what's the wording that I can like share like in the groups, and what does that mean, and also like um negotiating with editors and stuff like that. There's a lot of resources as well, like I get from the woman photograph.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think for like safety in general, there is a lot of resources in for photojournalists, like hostile cost training. I get that as well, like early in my career, which I was like quite lucky in that. And I think now like a lot of organizations are also offering like online courses how to do like digital safety and stuff like that, especially if you are covering issues that are really sensitive in the country's government, for example. So I get that lesson from like the community in the industry.
Okay, I think that was great. It's true. I think everybody should take the way that we need to, the network of support, the databases is very important. I want to pose another question actually to Valeria, right? As you said, you were doing some work in Thailand and all that, but inevitably there is this part of us that like to do our personal work, but this part of us that has to pay the bills. How do you strike that balance in your personal work and assignments? Like, where do you find the time?
Yeah, I always try to combine both, let's say, more like newsworthy work with more feature work. Obviously, once I relocated to Thailand, there was I needed an adjustment because I needed to understand how things work there. Where should I find where things are happening? So yeah, obviously that requires some work. And for the features, it was also about reading a lot and understanding what are the important stories, and how to present to an international audience stories that I consider important, for example. So yeah, that required some work, both individual work, which means like reading and trying to understand where are the important stories, but yeah, also a bit of networking, mostly for what concerns like the newsworthy part of the job, because yeah, you can be on Facebook, you can be in the line groups, but it's really hard to keep it up, right? So if you have like people to talk to and would tell you, hey, this is happening, or you tell them, oh, this is happening this day, it makes the job easier. So I would say newsworthy work and always showing up for the job helps to get recognized as well. And to go back to your question about community and also about my background, I didn't go to photography school. I actually come from an academic background. I did a PhD, and then I started working as a photographer during my PhD. And then at some point, I wanted that to become my full-time job. So I never had like the opportunity to network with fellow photographers during my university time because I was studying something else. So yeah, I did it very much on the field.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Before we move on, I have the two questions that actually beautifully segue to each other. But I mean, of course, unless you have a pressing question. Okay. So I just wanted to say something about what thank you, Valeria, for that insight into your journey and also how you balance, you know, your wants and your needs. Laula made a good point about getting some hostile environment training. I know there are some networks out there. I know the IWMF posts hostile environment. I know Reuters does that for, you know, our freelancers. So do some research because I think it's very important because if you're injured, you're going to compromise the whole file and your own safety. So thanks for bringing that out, Laula. I think it's very important. Joshua and Fadli, both of you can answer anytime. Like, as photographers, right? Like, how open are you? And I think there are many photographers out there who don't realize and they feel like, oh, they want to develop a story or they want to edit their work and they get stuck, right? So I just want to know, Joshua and Fadli, you all can take turns. How do you get yourself unstuck? If you have a story idea, and I mean, I know the answer to this, right? But I want to hear from you. Do you do peer editing? Do you look for editors out there? Because there's a lot of lone rangers out there who don't necessarily have an editor to help them guide the story. What's your solution, Joshua? Do you talk to, you know, fellow photographers and Fadli? So I will start with Joshua. How do you develop your own stories?
I think I think I'm grateful that like all this time I have a mentor. Mine is 𝗪𝗵𝗹𝗆𝗃, who's a Dutch photojournalist, and had spent time in Indonesia as well, covered the tsunami and whatnot in Africa as well. So like sometimes like when I get stuck, that you know that he would be my number one guy to talk to. I wish it's not just him. Like I think one of my biggest breaks is like in 2021, I became a Nat Geo explorer, and that opened up a whole new world on itself. People ask me all the time, like, how do you become a Nat Geo photographer? And I would always say that, well, I mean, have something else, have any other skills than just photography. And I think that's important. And with the National Geographic explorer community, we could always collaborate with scientists and environmentalists, conservationists. And I just wanted to point out, like somebody like Valeria. I mean, like she did her PhD, which I assume it's completely different from photography. So I think that's like I remember like when I was in Arles during that 7 photo mentorship, like Gary Knight, who spearheads 7 Foundation at the moment, says that, well, I mean if you just talk about photography to photographers, then the whole thing just becomes extremely boring. But like if you want to expand your horizon and look what other people are doing, and it's a whole new world. At the moment I'm collaborating with a few scientists, wanting to do a story on biodiversity. I think I was invited also to that, like at Nat Geo, I mean, there is this thing called the Meridian Grant where Nat Geo explorers can collaborate with other Nat Geo explorers. And now, I was invited to this where this guy was working on birds in Yogyakarta. I mean, it didn't become anything, but I mean, it's the point is like, you know, like having like a whole new horizon. You know, interacting with people from various disciplines. I think that keeps your mind fresh in a way. Yeah.
No, I think okay, Fadli, I have a slightly quick question for you, specific to you, but I think Joshua made a good point, but I keep hearing echoes of the same word of community and network, right? Now, be realistic, not all of us can get Gary Knight or Gene Smith or Gene, to be our mentors, but I think this is the whole purpose of starting conversations like that, to know that you have people in your neighborhood, you have fellow photographers that can peer edit and give you feedback. Any kind of feedback is better than no feedback. So I think we should make use of that, okay? And you don't have to go far. You don't have to be working for the New York Times to get good feedback. I just want to put it out there and just, you're okay, okay? We are all okay if we support each other. Fadli.
Ask your non-photographer friends.
Yeah, and you know what? It's at some point further down the line, if you're working on a project, there's always value in asking people who are not format experts to chime in, right? But you also can know that feedback is a gift that you don't have to open if it's useless. So, Fadli, can you talk very briefly, because I want to move on to Hwee and we've got like 10 minutes, okay? So can you spend like 2 or 3 minutes just talking to us about how do you navigate and negotiate and talk and look about, especially with book publishing, because I know there are a lot of photographers out here in the cyber world listening in that also are thinking about how do I publish if I want to publish a book. Okay, I mean, not all of us are going to be published photographers, but if you have a special project, what's your experience?
I think publishing book is quite difficult actually, but I think it's still totally possible. But I mean, when I did the book on my project on the 𝗵𝗸𝗆, which is titled the 𝗵𝗸𝗆 Journal, I think the first thing that I try to ask myself is like, what's the purpose of the book? Because the purpose of the book, and by then I know that I would like to tell the story, and I would like people to know and learn something from it. I think that's becoming the base of what I was gonna do next for the books. At the time when I was publishing and doing the story on about the Banda Island, I think even many Indonesians, they're not fully aware of what is it about, what the Banda Island can tell you about Indonesian history, about the history of the colonization in Indonesia. So I would like to tell that story, and it becoming the best line of what I was trying to do. So I mean, like, we as a photographer, sometimes, you know, we have, like, all of us have a big ego that, okay, the photography should be the core of everything. The photography should be the core of the book. But then if we do that, sometimes we miss the entire idea of why we do the project in the first place. So with the 𝗵𝗸𝗆 Journal, I decided from the start that we would do that as a collaboration between me and a writer. And in the end, it's also becoming a collaboration between me, the writer, the designer, the editor, and many other people that are involved. So it's more than just two person that is in the cover of the book, because we would like to deliver the story, because we would like people to understand what we are trying to tell. Because what we are trying to tell is something that is very important, especially for Indonesian to know their own history. And we would like to, you know, even like high school student to understand what we are trying to tell. So I think that's how we make a lot of consideration when we did the book. So I mean, like, for me, after I did the book on the 𝗵𝗸𝗆 Journal, personally, I have no interest anymore so far to create just a photography book, because for me, to do a project like multi-years project, and Indian, very few people will understand that. I think that is not something that I would like to do in the future. I mean, like for the next, I will collaborate more with other people as well, whether it's a writer or I think like what Joshua pointed out, like scientists, that is something that is really interesting as well, because sometimes, you know, because when I try to do a project or even like short story, I try to do my own research, mostly on the internet, and I found a lot of, you know, like academic papers, and you know, like these academic papers are so interesting, but then it's becoming a little bit less interesting because, you know, because many people wouldn't be able to understand it, and photography can help that. So it's something that, I mean, like there are so many possibilities that we can do and contribute to it, I think.
I think Kachin has a follow-up question, Fadli, but I want to very quickly put a pin in what you said and like inflate it even more, because I think that's the very big headline, is that you need to serve the story. It's not about your ego. And I think you're actually kind of what you're saying is that it's a collaboration. If you don't put yourself, it's not about you, right? It's about the story, which means it opens you up to collaborating with editors and collaborating with what makes the story the best. Kachin, did you have a...
Yeah, I can't help but to notice that apart from Valeria, almost every one of you is locally based. That means, and the common questions we keep hearing is, I live in XYZ city, there's nothing happening. I photograph everything that I needed to photograph. I know Singapore inside out is so boring, nothing's happening. How do you find new ideas? You know, like you walk around and or walk at different hours of the night to look at your own background, your own backyard differently. How do you feel excited about a place that you have lived in for the past 35 years?
Actually, I want to pose that question to Hwee, because I remember when Hwee was in the Straits Times, she had a knack for looking for the very local stories, right? And I think there's this saying that I like to impart to photographers that I mentor, which is you shoot locally, but you think globally, because not everybody knows what goes on in your backyard. So Hwee, I remember specifically a few stories that you came up with, which was like, oh, I didn't realize. So what do? Do you just go around, drive around, you know, like talk to people? How do you get ideas when you were, you know, shooting for EPA as a local photographer or Straits Times?
And also, especially after you moved back, after living away, did you see the country in a different way? Like?
I think I moved back at a time when Singapore, I mean, the whole world was basically going through a drastic change. That was during the COVID times. So that basically, you know, drastically changed the landscape of Singapore. And at that time, yeah, that it made Singapore completely different, like what I was very used to. I mean, even when I was based in Beijing, I would come back to Singapore and I was always amazed to see that Singapore is forever changing and there's always something new happening. And when I came back, COVID really changed how things became, and it became like a desolate landscape. I was commissioned by the National Museum to do a series. So I think some of the other photographers were part of that as well. And that kind of like give me a new understanding of Singapore. And as time goes by, as you kind of like stay in the country a bit more, you do find that okay, things are more or less remaining the same. So but I think there's always something different. There's always a story out there. There's always something that you can discover of the community, of what there's always something interesting happening. Like, for example, the last story I did was on the Purple Symphony, which was about this very able and disabled people, and their stories are so interesting. And that's one of the things that I didn't know actually that we have in Singapore until you start talking to I have my friends and also fellow orchestra members. So these are stories that you can always find in our community, and you can always, discover even as you go along. And yeah.
Sorry. Look, I think that what you said was so important. I think you have to, I just wanted to share something, sorry to kind of cut you off a little bit, which from the photo editor's point of view. So right now, for me at least, I run the long form storytelling globally in Reuters. And what we are trending towards is we start to like to use local photographers, because we feel, especially in this landscape, we're talking about diversity and being inclusive, and the landscape of photography is changing. We no longer get the foreigner to parachute in and do stories in your country. As freelancers, I would like to advocate that you tell stories in your own backyard, because you have the most understanding, the nuance, and the ability to get access, right? So I think that's very important, and thank you for bringing that up, Riel. So looking in your backyard, like I said, think about the ripple effects on what's happening in the world, but what's happened and how it affects your own community, and tell those stories, because photo editors are looking toward that now, right?
That's the same for EPA as well. We're all, for a long time we have been that we are having, we have staffers in most of the countries that we have photographers in, and we work with local photographers as well. So it's actually something that we want to continue as well. So I think this is quite the trend now, basically. And with budgets scaling down, I think it's something that is where the trend is going to.
Veejay, maybe this question is for you. You're working on a fantastic project. How do you make sure that editors like May, who is living in New York, or like Hwee, how do you make sure that they know that you have this cooking, and how do you publicize that to them? Feel free to jump in as well.
You don't have to go into a whole pitch process, just because there's a whole conversation and session, but maybe just talk about how you network and best practices, and we can also chime in there later. But what do you do personally?
I don't know who can remember, but during the few years ago, there was a page called Light Stalkers. So I would do cold emails every so often. If I had a working edit, for example, of my old work, the 𝗿𝗵𝘁. So I did cold emails a lot. And then when Facebook came, in Facebook, I didn't get much, I would say, success, but I would make it, I would try to get direct contacts of editors and send them emails every so often. Most often, the project would not be published, but I would get an assignment, or it turns into something different. I would say maybe 2 out of 10 would be about mine, and then 8 would be about something else, a possible assignment, a collaboration, and so on. So I think reaching out digitally is one way. I did try to do the festival route at one point, and whenever I can. It's a little bit difficult for us to travel into, for example, Perpignan and Arles. I did try that, and whenever I would get the chance, I would always have a portfolio ready or a working edit ready. It also depends on if I am actually trying to get my work published, or am I just trying to get support, or just networking. So I think those are important points to note, especially for those who are sort of trying to find support for their projects.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Question for Valeria, maybe before you left Italy, did you make sure that Italian publisher knows that, hey, I'm an Italian photographer moving to Asia. If you need an assignment executed, I'm available. And do you do things like that?
I don't work that much with Italian media because unfortunately they are not well known for paying great. They tend not to pay at all. I'm sorry to say that, but yeah, when I moved to Asia, before then I had been based in Northern Europe for quite a while. So in the last before Bangkok, I was in Brussels, and Amsterdam, and before that Paris. So I haven't been living in Italy for a long time. But yeah, when I moved to Asia, I made sure that people knew. So I used to work for Bloomberg in Brussels. So then my editor knew that I was moving to Asia. So yeah, he helped me to find some contacts in Asia.
There's something valuable in knowing your local staffers as well. That you can go like, hey, I'm available for freelance. Does your editor, need anyone? Please know that they can reach out. So at the same time, I would advocate for you guys to be patient, because, and this is one of the questions, and we're going to segue into, we're going to move on to Q&A, but editors are more than willing to hear from you, but tend to get overwhelmed, and so be patient with the emails. If after a week you don't hear back, you can just go gentle reminder, hey, I sent you an email. And if they really don't respond to you, then, maybe move on. I think that was
on video, actually. So to everyone who's freelancing, I wonder how much pressure do you face in like getting into video? Like some of us can't even deal with still photography, and yet there's this voice saying you need to have video, otherwise
or any format for that matter, audio, or does anybody have experience with or your own thoughts, or are you out there learning a new skill set because you feel like you need to survive in this changing industry? Any experience that anybody want to share? Veejay.
An opportunity came to me over a year ago to direct a full-length documentary, which I had no experience of, but in terms of video, it has been a part of news assignments, especially for news agencies, for example, Bloomberg, where I correspond for. And when that opportunity came, I had to choose which role I took. So it's either you're a cinematographer or director of photography, or you're the director, which I eventually chose to direct it instead of shooting it myself. I would say I've seen some photographers even before this whole transition to video that especially in the documentary field, because sometimes documentary projects tend to spread out for years, and some photographers felt that it was a natural sort of transition to make short documentaries, or even just video interviews. So it's something to consider. It is very hard to do two things at the same time, but it's out there. I mean, it's happening. It has been done. Some photographers are doing it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah. Shall we move on to? I think
Annice wants to say something.
Yeah.
Annice, go ahead.
I mean, I think same as Veejay as well. For me, in few years ago, I was in the jungle covering like the indigenous people, and then I got a dislocated ankle, so they wheeled me out, and that's where it dawned on me that the doctor will say that, okay, you need 4 to 6 months to heal, just be patient and all. I think that really put you as a person in the test. That's where I start reaching out, like, hey, even like my friends or anyone, like, do you guys need to just burn up your skills also? So I think really humble down to us. So I was like, oh, I'm actually willing to edit if you can, live edit and all. So I remember I was with about a group as well to work as a team, and I always love the camaraderie as a team as well. That really opens a lot of doors. So when either you're injured or whatnot, so I was an on-site editor for a race car tournament for 3 days straight. So that was very interesting for me, that as a photojournalist, you always wanted to be out there, like charge and all, but now it's like you're being put sitting there for like 8 hours looking at 6 photographers work, and that's where you really understand that, oh, what are they seeing? And you had a walkie-talkie telling like, hi, photographer 1, 2, 3, you guys are shooting the same thing, can you guys nod? And then you can actually work around with that and actually help like be a team player, so to develop a set and to able to deliver to the client. And also that opportunity is also one opportunity led to another, that I was offered to executive produce a campaign as well. It was, I think, it was 2 years ago to direct a Southeast Asia campaign for Victoria's Secrets. And I know that they wanted to shoot, they actually approached me to shoot the campaign. And I realized that just so happened, being open and talk to peers, like simple as, hey, how are you? So I have one photographer that I know that she's really good at shooting commercial, very clean and delivers well. And she wanted to quit photography at that time. And that's where I reached out like, hi, do you want to take on as a lead photographer? Then from there on, venture into production, working with directors and all. Then you learn a lot. At the end, I feel like nothing is in vain, whether you're injured or a redirection or a rejection. So yeah.
I think it's very good advice from Annice. Being a good editor will make you a better photographer at the end of the day, right? Because you learn how to see. So I think that's there's so many other different points. This photography world is not just like field facing, and there's a lot of back end facing, but we hear echoes of collaboration, networking, you know, being wise, trying, persevering, community. So all those things are, I think, a good takeaway for all of us starting in this journey or already on the way or making life decisions that we have to now. Maybe I think it's time to open to Q&A. Yeah, if you want to ask questions, we can go down the question list. Some of it has been touched on. And then if you want to ask a question, just type it in. It's not too late because it will open up to more conversations, right? So yeah.
I'm gonna kick us off with a Q&A as well. I mean, there's a couple of things that I want to get to here. But just based upon what everybody's been saying, a question I have really is about how flexible do you guys feel it is necessary to be in terms of like working on long form projects, working on kind of like very, very local, hyper local kind of news projects, like reaching out to local news organizations, reaching out to international organizations. Do you as photographers feel like your kind of attention is all over the place? And, you know, in trying to get the next job, the next job, the next job, the next project going, getting this funding for this funding? Or do any of you have like something that is like a very, very sort of singular focus that you are able to kind of like really sort of hone in on and work? Or is it like that kind of precarity of being a photographer? Is that the reality of your day-to-day lives? And that's probably more to those who don't have staff jobs, but also, you know, in terms of like staff work, you know, there's the next story, the next story, the next story that you have to chase.
Yes.
So does anyone want to have a stab at answering that question? How precarious do you feel in your job? Let me put it that way.
Well, how chaotic is it for you right now?
Pick on someone.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Ian is smiling and you're off mute. And you spoke last, so we'll give you more oxygen now.
Okay, so I'd say like at the moment in my current phase, I'm working on a long-term project, and it's really occupied most of my attention for, I would say, the last 2.5 years. And I think assignments have taken a bit of a backseat because of that. And it's the first time I've really kind of like fully dedicated most of my working time doing that through a grant. And I actually really enjoy it. I mean, it's been also stressful, of course, but I also enjoy the focus of being able to do that. In the past, I would say that when I was getting a lot of assignments or like I didn't have a big project going on, I loved getting assignments because it was a way for me, interestingly, it was a way for me to learn about what else is going on outside in the world without really having to do any heavy lifting. Because usually when a magazine or a publication comes to you, they come in with the writer having written something or done some research. So you get a lot of that feedback and insight initially. And the plus side of it is that I spent so many years sharpening my skill and focusing on my skill as a photographer that that was the easiest part of the job largely. Like I could actually just feel like, okay, I can run and play, you know, because someone's just told me where to go. Whereas when I'm working my own project, there's always a huge amount of doubt. There's a huge amount of research. There's an immense amount of insecurities because I have to ask myself whether I trust myself in those ideas, etc. And I have to say that I enjoy the balance of both, you know, like these periods where you get to really focus on a single thing. And I would say that the beginning is the most exciting. Then it just becomes quite messy. Then when you start to get a grip of what you're doing, it starts to be really fun again, you know. So I would say that even when I didn't have maybe the credentials in my early days of doing what I was doing, being able to get grants or financial support, the one thing I always did was I always made sure that I would take some of my own savings and invest it into a project that I cared about. And I think there's so much that you learn and grow through something that you're dealing with over a long period of time versus, let's say, the short period of time. You get different types of lessons out of it. And those early years really helped me, I think, hone my visual and kind of like project skills in that way. I think I'm just going to jump on a little segue, like some things that other people have said, like I think Fadli, I don't know if it was Veejay, etc., but working on like projects and collaborating with other people. That's the one thing I realized, having focused really hard on developing a strong skill set, which was photography, that I realized that there were other skill sets that I was lacking. And that over time, I started having to try and develop those things as well, like finding collaborators or people to work with, etc. Because you realize that you can't just use that way of like focused learning all the time. Like you know, there's only so much time in one day. So sometimes it helps to be collaborating and drawing on people's skills as well, and basically being able to punch above your weight because of these collaborations and these partnerships that you get out of it. So yeah, so I think that's basically it. To sum it up, focusing as learning, but also sometimes a diffused focus is good.
So I want to read out something that is important because especially nowadays it's discussed a lot in terms of putting yourself in a space that you do not feel safe, or when you encounter something difficult as photographers. I can give my input after we hear from photographers as an editor, but Elka, who is in India now, hi Elka, who has asked, in what capacity do you share difficult experiences in the field with your editor? Because as photographers, you guys put your delivering work as, especially if you're a freelancer, you must deliver, and you don't want to take up your editor's time, or you don't want to look like you can't handle it. Like, I just want to hear very quickly, Laula, have you ever had an experience where you face something uncomfortable or dangerous, or you don't want to shoot something, and how do you say no? Or do you talk to your editor about it?
I think it wasn't the experience that I had was not about like kind of like a dangerous situation, but it's more in a ethical way that I feel conflicted about. So like when I covered Kanjuruhan football tragedy, it was like the second most disaster about football sports, where people get crushed and die in the stadium because of the police shooting tear gas inside the stadium, and the door was closed. So that I arrived for the assignments, I think 2 days after the incident. So that was like an early time for where people, like the families, are still mourning. It's where usually like in Indonesia, like in like Muslim communities, they do like 7 days prayers usually, like for mourning of the dead. So that was like very difficult situation because I have to, you know, like take the pictures of the family and do some interviews, but also like at the same time I will also want to honor their time and be more mindful about like the situation, because they are still mourning their families who are dead. So that's where I talk to my editors about the situation. And usually, like with assignments like that, you don't have a lot of time. The editor usually give you like 3 days max to cover this, and you don't have a lot of time to spend with the families to kind of do like the approach like more like softly. So like when it comes to that, I shared with my editor that okay, this situation is like this. I told him about how like, you know, the cultural situation about like how Muslim people mourning and like the prayers they are doing for 7 days, and I only have a little bit of time doing like, you know, to shoot some photos, and even like to kind of be mindful of my time. I don't have to take too much time of the families, because they're still dealing with a lot of stuff. So I share that with my editors and talk to him like, you know, like I want to do like this ethically and try to be mindful when photographing. That's why like I have a very limited selection of edits compared to like, you know, just, you know, photographing a lot of stuff. And I just focus on like 3 different families and spend like as much time as I can when taking the photos.
Thanks, Laula. I think just to summarize and just to add very quick note before we move on to our last questions. From a photographer point of view, I really appreciate that editor's point of view, I really appreciate that you talk about communication with your editor. I think that's the #1 thing. We always like the photographer on the ground to talk to us, to me, and you should never ever do something that you're not comfortable with. No story is worth your life or someone else's pain. So thank you for being sensible in that area. But I think you also have to work with editors that you trust, right? So you should always speak to that, because you shouldn't suffer and you need to be supported. So you should always communicate. So be a little bit picky of who you work with as well. You have the power to choose your assignments, right? Most of the time, hopefully. So just bear in mind that, okay? We want to move on to 2 questions that are kind of related, which is about, from Nathan, it's about access. And I know how you gain, no, this question is from Bobo. Look, there's so many different scenarios, okay, about how you gain access in documentary photography, but we can pick out one of you to answer that, just to give an example. But remember, there's so many different permutations of what's happening. But Nathan also talked about how is it common to approach a story with one storyline in mind, right? And then, like, I guess somebody can speak to the experience where they go in with a certain framework of a story, and then it evolves and it develops. And how do you handle that with your editor or yourself? Okay. I don't know. Maybe let's call on Priyang, right? It's a tough one to answer. Access documentary photography, because every situation is different. But can you just speak more about your own experience if you have to like gain someone's trust or something? And then the other part is have you ever had a story where you have to, I hate to use this buzzword, pivot the story, you know, or change the angle halfway through?
I think access, depending on the subject matter, it is always a sensitive, it depends on how sensitive the subject matter is, and what kind of story you're actually looking into. But in the end, it's all about trust. It's all about being objective, and that, you know, there is communication between you and your subject, that that you are very transparent, and, you know, they know what you are trying to do, and what they expect your involvement as well. And that if you say something and that you know, they also expect you to take up your end of the promises as well. So I think in the end, it's about, you know, taking the time to talk to your subject and getting their trust, and you know, being open about what is going to happen to the end product of your story as well. And that's very important, as in, you know, they have to understand what you're going to say in your story and how you're going to present their life, because it's their life. I mean, they're putting their trust in you. So I think that is very important, and that is what the main thing is, that both of you are very, very upfront about it.
Because the end product can end up with, we've had stories where they don't understand the reach in the story, right? That's worldwide, and that they will get sometimes hate mail, and they have to understand that, and they have to understand the risk that they put. Let's round up. Have you ever had a story that you went out to do and it completely changed gears and turned out to be different, better, or hopefully better or worse? I don't know. Joshua, did you ever have a story that took a U-turn on a left turn and without a indicator? Joshua, did you ever yeah.
Sorry. So do I have a story?
Did you ever work on a story and you went to and you expected ABC and it came out XYZ? You know what I mean? Like change angle a bit, expanded, became more.
Ooh.
Wow. So
I think the prime example that I have would be the COVID photo. I mean, that's a story. I mean, the thing is, like when I send that image out, like when I speak with the Nat Geo editors at the time, and I basically have a set of images, but Nat Geo only picked that one. You know, and people would argue some over time that it's like, yeah, maybe like you know, not like Nat Geo maybe was using was being, well, I wouldn't say opportunistic, but like maybe Nat Geo was, you know, like sort of pinpointing a spotlight on what's happening in Indonesia. Like, for example, imagine if that happened in the States, then people would just go insane. But then obviously, you know, and then the photo went viral on social media and whatnot, and that's that. But it is what it is, you know. I mean, like I think for that particular image, I think that's you know, there's no other way around it, and like there's no interpretation other than the fact that, you know, this was a COVID-19 fiction. I wanted to touch on, I suppose, like, you know, answering your previous question. So I guess I could share now that you know, I spoke with all the editors at Nat Geo about what's happening. It went viral, and people were commenting violently on social media. If you know, I guess if you remember COVID times, that's 5 years ago now, and like Nat Geo through Disney, they actually offered security support. So they said that they will send you know, like a bodyguard that that will come to my house and stay around for, you know, 24 hours for 7 days. But I thought, okay, well, okay, this is getting a little too far, and I didn't want, you know, some stranger, you know, hanging around my door and having tea or whatever. But I guess that's it. That's all there is. I mean, yeah,
I
that,
think,
you
no, I
know.
hear you. Just wanted to put it out there to photographers out there that, look, I think at the end of the day, you have to, like what Hui Yang said, before others will wrap this segment up here, you have to be transparent about what you do and what the ripple effects are. You have to think about why you do what you do and the ripples on the people that you're photographing and on yourself, right? Especially in this day and age where our work is used on different platforms, you're going to get different sets of reactions. So I think we need to be fast, but be accurate and be thoughtful. And it's not about you, and you've got to think about the repercussions. So that's a big discussion that we can keeping on, but that's why we have a nice community that we're starting right here, right? So let's continue to do the amazing work. I really appreciate y'all. Stay safe and stay true to what you do. I'll let Charlene wrap this up. But thank you for your wonderful questions.
Yes. Just before we wrap up, I actually have a question, and I think I'm going to direct this to Fadli and Veejay. We had somebody ask earlier about mentorship because Joshua spoke about being lucky enough to be mentored. I know both of you mentor a fair few photographers. Are you taking on more? Would you like people to approach you? How do your mentees get in touch with you? Veejay, maybe go first.
I think before I can say yes or no to that, I think for if someone needs, I guess, mentorship or help with a project or with any would need advice, professional advice, I hope that they prepare a little bit of I would say materials for themselves. Like for example, at least a decent portfolio, something that they're working on. From my experience, I would get a lot of I would say consultations that a bit more personal. They're a bit more personal. Fine. If I have the time of day, I would love to, I would love to have these conversations. But if you're looking for mentorship and if you're looking for, to develop work and so on, I guess focus on that first. If I am taking on any mentees for the moment, maybe just send an email. Or Parallax, I think, is taking on, as a community. But yes, definitely. If anyone, or also just to add quickly, if you feel that a certain photographer, you feel strongly about a certain photographer, their practice and so on, just send them a message. It's always, there's nothing wrong in sending a nice message and say hi and, I admire your work and so on. And then if they're open to collaboration or open to mentorship, then that's cool.
Great. Thank you, Veejay. Fadli, would you like to take this?
Yeah, for me, I think it's quite the same. I totally realized when I was started, it's very difficult for me to find my way, to navigate through things. So for now, I'm totally open. If anyone would like to ask me questions, send me messages, or to become or to become a mentee, if I have time, of course I would love to. But at least to discuss, I'm totally open to that. If anyone, because I did that I do that from time to time. There are always photographer who are starting, asking me questions, something just like as simple as a direct message on Instagram, and we start talking. I'm totally open to that. Otherwise it can be quite difficult, of course there are workshops out there or mentorship, but sometimes people doesn't have any resource to do that. And I feel that too, because when I was starting to become a photographer, it's also very difficult. So yeah, I try to keep myself open as much as possible to new photographer if they want to know anything, or just as simple as how to write emails to editors. Just because sometimes many people they don't know that about that as well. So I always very open to that. I think that's the only way how we can help other photographers out there.
Hey, fantastic. Thank you so much, Fadli. Okay,
I guess for photographer looking for mentors or what, I think the thing I will definitely advocate is to develop a very thick skin, but know how to ask people nicely. Never send images before someone agree to look at your portfolio. It's start off with a nice letter like, "Hi, Veejay, I like what you did with that, and I'm a photographer. I'm just wondering whether you would be able to spend a little bit of time looking at a new project that I'm developing." And very simple.
Yeah, and I think the important part here to say is when you are asking, contextualize your work, make sure you know what you are asking for. And yeah, ask nicely, email, have a portfolio in mind.
And I will speak from my own experience that sometimes the questions are not about your work. sometimes it's like, how do you navigate motherhood and being a photojournalist? How do you navigate changing career mid-career? Do you know what I mean? Like, photography is about life, right? And how you navigate life will affect how you see. So bear that in mind, and that's why I tell people at portfolio reviews, just be respectful and cognizant that we're all volunteering our time. So just be respectful. Look, and also mentor each other. Mentorship is not a one-way street. Okay, I get as much as I did from people. So we're gonna wrap this up. But Ian, do you have any last words? You're raising your hand. Like, do you want to say something?
No, yeah. I just wanted to say something quickly. Like, I think everything everyone's saying is really wise, but one other thing is like, if you have your own community in which you are doing your work and you're sharing your work with your friends or people your peers that you respect, they're really an important support group if you have that. Because I think in the early days when I started out, I didn't realize but those kind of like social get-togethers where I would get together with friends and we'll give ourselves crits on our works and would look at slides, etc., was super helpful because that allowed you to grow, so that when you actually approach someone who you don't know but you admire or as a professional person, you're putting your best foot forward at that point. So you've done all of your homework to get as far as you can, and now you're trying to get feedback and insights. Because if you come in and you contact the people and your work, you haven't put your best foot forward or all the work that you need to do to produce the work as well as you could, and you approach them, you'll be getting advice that essentially is just where your work is at that point. So do some of that homework before, ideally, if you can, unless it's, let's say, relating to how you might operate in the field, etc., to get that kind of advice. But I'd say the more you do and try to answer those questions yourself, you'll get more out of that connection with the person that you reach out to afterwards, because they'll be able to answer higher level questions.
Figure out together, basically. So do you want to wrap?
Okay, so we're out of time, and yeah, we could keep on chatting for ages, as always. I'm just gonna add a little bit, like if you want this kind of feedback, you want this kind of mentorship, you want this, man, you don't have to necessarily go to like big name photographers, man. Like start your own community, talk to your friends, talk to the people around you, share and show the work. Doesn't have to even be photographers, right? I get some of my best advice from people who are not photographers. So, make sure that you have that and share what you're doing. Just, be social, talk to each other. I'm going to do a quick thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the panelists. Brian, turn on your camera. We have a behind the scenes team here. So say hello, everybody. All right.
Boy band cover.
So just so everybody knows who they are, that's Hillary, Brian, Yanlin, and Sharon. Sarah. Sarah. They are all coordinators from Pictures of the Year Asia.
Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to all the attendees who have stayed with us all the way to the end. Right? Do keep in touch. The links are there in the chat and all of this kind of thing. We had a question from Wallace, which I really, really like, and we didn't get round to. So I'm going to give everybody on the panel a little bit of a challenge, right?
One word.
Okay, one word. What do you do? What do you do that is not photography that informs your work? We don't have time to talk about how it informs your work, but just one word, one thing that you do, and then we can all go away and wonder how it informs your work.
Okay, I'm going clockwise, so in no particular. Hwee.
After you say, you can log off. So like, that's
Okay.
incentive.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Parallax, to Tom and 𝗿𝗵𝗁 and everyone for having us here. And as to that question, I would say learning. Yep, continuous learning. All right, take care.
Thanks, Hwee. Ian?
Writing.
Writing, awesome. Valeria?
Yoga and swimming.
Yoga and drawing.
Swimming.
Oh.
Grazie. Okay, Annice?
Check up on loved ones, and then
Very nice,
yeah.
family, mental health.
Go run. Go running. Yeah.
Go running.
Joshua?
I have one right now. It's cooking. It really settles.
Yeah. And Veejay?
Yeah, walking and cooking as well.
Kitchen? Surprise.
Watching K-drama, like
Oh my God, I believe him. Mom, what?
trail running.
Very nice. Laula?
Weightlifting.
Charlene?
Cycling.
Fadli? Fadli, you're muted. Okay.
Reading and driving around.
I hope not at the same time, okay? Oh my God. And for me, it's hugging my dog. Yeah.
Wait. Hillary.
Me?
Yeah. What's one thing that you do? Like
Reading actually nowadays. Reading.
I mean, it doesn't inform my photography like I don't, but
Yanling.
mental health.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Is that even a thing? Like,
As in getting a healthy shape, yeah.
Jimmy. That's a Gen Z
Gymming.
thing.
There's a Gen Z thing, yes. What about you, Sarah?
Ryan.
Music, okay. Look, all these things might not inform your photography, but it keeps your mental health in check. So thank you for the wonderful, nourishing conversation. I think this is great.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Let's do it again.
Stay safe
Thank you, everybody.
and stay well. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.